The items of the Smash series are often glossed over, or at least never looked at too deeply by anyone playing the game seriously, but there's actually a lot of interesting stuff to learn about them, and that's what I'm focusing on in this mini-series, going over every single item in the game and talking about a few things ranging from basic mechanics to some neat trivia, or their origins, and all that fun stuff. Today we're going to be picking up at the Sandbag and going all the way over to the Bunny Hood. Some of the items in here will be lumped together either because they're really similar or because their individual sections were just really short, but it'll make sense for each of them. Before I do that though, I want to quickly touch up on two items from my last video. For the Smash Ball, I, in all of my wisdom, neglected to bring up the underdog system it has. You know, in the section describing how its HP works, that was smart. Basically, if you're in last place, it becomes considerably easier for you to break the Smash Ball, going down in basically just one hit right after it spawns in. On the flip side, if you're in first place, it becomes considerably harder to break it, to the point where it took me over 50% dealt over a fairly long period of time before it broke. That alone likely explains why it would feel like there's a huge discrepancy in how easy or hard it is to break. Of course, this fact does still scale with how its overall health decays as time goes on, though the amount in which this underdog factor comes into play also isn't static. For example, if you're just a single stock behind, while the Smash Ball is still easier to break than it normally would be, it's not quite the same extent as with other tests, and vice versa. I had also been asked about how much health the Smash Ball has when it gets knocked out of someone, and the answer seems to be it acts as if it was freshly spawned in again, and its health echoes that. It's really easy to see in training mode, given that a sweet spot down tilt is the perfect threshold for breaking it, and it instantly breaks it after the ball's been knocked out, yet weaker moves won't. And this is how it works in a normal match too, of course. Again, the numbers are hard to get concretely because of how the health decays over time, and it usually takes me time to dish out the damage, but that's the idea. Funny enough though, whenever I had gotten a Smash Ball in its soccer ball form, whenever it got knocked out, it had way more health than it normally would in training mode. Like 4 times as much. This wasn't how it worked in a real match, its health was perfectly fine over there, so my guess is that, for whatever reason, they neglected to lower the max HP of the gravity ball after being knocked out of someone in training mode, resulting in this discrepancy. It's really bizarre. It showcases just how convoluted the topic of the Smash Ball's HP really is. Like, even after all of this, there's still loads of factors I could have touched up on. But I think I'm giving this one item a bit too much love, so I'd like to move on to others instead. And I guess I can just rewrite the whole section when I do the inevitable supercut later on, so. And for the capsule, I brought up how its origins are likely based around gachapon, those little capsule things that you can get from vending machines. However, I got multiple comments bringing up a more likely and more interesting idea of where the item's inspiration came from. Dragon Ball. The Capsule Corp capsules have a little button on the top that looks really similar to the capsules here. And while the shape of them are shorter and wider in Smash Ultimate, in the past they were a lot longer and skinnier, which makes them look even more directly similar. I think it's fair to say there's at least some inspiration here, which is a really fun and interesting way to pay homage to Dragon Ball. I still do think there are elements of gachapon in this, at least in its newer, shorter design, especially with the way it splits in half when you open it, but having the item be at least a dual reference is a really funny idea. Okay, so that was the wrap up all done, so let's touch up on some actually new items. The Sandbag is unique as far as items go in that it's actually able to be grabbed, and thus also command grabbed. But an additional hidden factor is that for these command grabs, the Sandbag is not actually able to mash out of anything, or even just automatically get out. So while Samus would normally be released from Ruli's side special around right here without any inputs, the Sandbag won't. So if we turn off hazards to remove any obstacles, we can keep the Sandbag dragging across the stage for as long as we want. I kept it going for about 7 minutes or so, and it showed no signs of being able to despawn. And as you probably know, the dragging portion of this move also deals damage, so the Sandbag is actually gaining more and more percent throughout this whole ordeal, which we can see when I let go with how extreme the knockback is with these up tilts. Also, a funny, unrelated thing I noticed while doing this is how the character portraits fade a little bit whenever you walk to that part of the screen where they are. It's a pretty nice touch that I never really noticed before. To get a basic fact out of the way, because I figure some people don't even know this, but yes, the different food items heal a different amount depending on how hardy they are, or possibly how yummers they are, I don't know. So something like cheese heals 5%, with a steak healing 12%. There's a more thorough list on the wiki if you wanted to see what a specific food healed. Also yes, there's a different eating sound between the food items and the drinks. But for a slightly more unique fact is how, when you eat food, you're actually technically picking it up for a handful of frames before it gets consumed, and thus heals you. Meaning if you interrupted these few frames, you can actually drop the food item, an interaction you probably won't see very frequently. This is especially funny when you try it with Kirby's Inhale, as it has a similar frame window for this type of thing, but if you interrupt this action, instead of dropping, the food will just disappear. So I guess it was technically consumed, but because Kirby wasn't able to savor it, he never really got any healing from it, which is kinda sad. The Maxim tomato normally heals 50% when consumed. However, when Wario eats it, specifically by using his neutral special, he'll actually heal a total of 75% instead. This is a very specific mechanic, as Kirby's Inhale does not echo this feature. However, Wario's Chomp will also do this for the food items as well. It's consistently a 1.5 times increase. So the cheese goes from 5% to 7.5% and so on and so forth. However, the heart container is unique from this, as it still heals 100% when chomped. This is because despite being a recovery item, it is not a food item specifically. Because of this property, if you have any spirits that activate when you've eaten something, they will not activate when you, I guess absorb the heart container, but of course will with the Maxim tomato. So even though these two items can be lumped together for obvious reasons, there is this difference to keep in mind. The way the fairy bottle works is very simple, only healing you when you're at 100% or more, and otherwise just acting like a basic throwing item. If you're holding the item while at, say, 99%, and then you go over 100%, the fairy will activate automatically, even if you're currently trying to throw it or use another action. Though if you drop it on the same exact frame that you take damage, it won't come to your rescue. This doesn't negate knockback though, so you can still easily get KO'd even if you're holding it. If you throw it at someone who's over 100%, you'll heal them instead, but if you hit someone who's at like 99% again, it'll still launch them. This means under normal settings, this here is the most knockback you'll realistically see the fairy bottle do, given you can't deal damage at higher percents. Though obviously we can enhance that in a few ways, like making use of some size changes and using the right test dummies, and like this, the fairy bottle can KO someone under the right circumstances. Or you can just do some reflect shenanigans and make it extremely powerful that way. So while you normally wouldn't ever see a fairy bottle dish out a traditional KO, it can certainly happen. And it's still just way more likely than getting a KO with the special attack Piranha Plant has when you footstool it while it's crouched, especially given that you can just air dodge the attack after the footstool, rendering it somehow incredibly niche and also useless. Yeah, how many people didn't know that that was a thing? Well, now you do. Wait, we're supposed to be talking about items here, The healing effect of this sprout will stack with others, meaning you can pile them on and start healing a bunch. The resulting spiral of visual effects is a little bit nauseating, but you really can't beat these numbers. That's like 300% healed in just a few seconds. However, what if you hated getting healed? I understand the feeling, and luckily all you have to do is shield it. It doesn't completely negate it, but any heal effect you receive while shielding will actually be halved, bringing it from 1.6% per tick to 0.8%. I imagine this is to make it so you can't just safely camp and get heals passively. If you want the full benefits from them, you have to be out in the open in some way. This is actually how it works with the healing field as well. You can just kinda nerf its healing output by shielding, but uniquely with this, you can also spot dodge to avoid it outright. If you consider the healing to come in pulses, then you can avoid each pulse altogether. Something you can't even do with the healing sprout. So that's some next level healing avoidance. This even carries over to the superstar effect, so if you're invincible, you will completely avoid the healing, unlike with the healing sprout. Though for the healing sprout, you can't have it get attached to you while you're invincible, so it either needs to be attached beforehand or you just need to hold it. To compensate for lumping these two together, I'll just give you two fun size change facts. As you may know, changing one size will also change the pitch of their voices, going higher when they're small,
Hands off my
and lower when they're big.
Hands off my
However, with Olimar's Pikmin, they keep their pitch the same as when they were plucked, rather than based on their current size. So even if you grow or shrink, they sound the same. What this also means is that if you pluck them while you're big, they will always have a lower pitch, and vice versa. Additionally, when you change size, you can normally expect your moves to change as well, both in size and power. You think this is how it works for projectiles too, given how massive or tiny they become, and yet they actually dish out the same damage as before. And not just damage, but knockback. Meaning your projectiles are technically a worse option when you're larger, given that you're meant to be much stronger. But when you're smaller, they can end up being a lot more effective since your other moves are considerably weaker, which is really interesting. As you're probably aware, you can control where you land with the Warp Star by tilting the control stick either left or right. While it's not usually a good idea to go off stage with it, because it has a spike hitbox when it goes down, there's certainly room for something goofy with that. However, something a lot of people don't know is that you can control when you land with it as well. If you hold up on the control stick, you delay the crash by a little while, and by holding down, you crash way earlier. So you can do this to really catch someone off guard. Now if you want a really niche tech that I only discovered on accident while doing this, I guess if you have the perfect positioning, you can land the warp star right on the ledge. I have no idea how it works, but I guess you're just barely landing on the ground, but still slipping past it, which maybe triggers the explosion but lets you go a little bit farther down than normal anyways. It was actually really consistent by just picking up the warp star right in front of where the CPU spawns in training mode, and just holding towards the ledge the whole time. So technically, you can catch someone off guard if they're just hanging by the ledge for a while, for a safe and deadly punish. So long as you can just remember the positioning of where you're supposed to grab it, because otherwise you might just die. Also, here's what Banjo and Kazooie look like when they're riding Warp Star. Ain't they just the cutest things? When you pick up the Superstar, you'll be able to hear the background jingle that normally accompanies it. Usually if someone else picks it up, the jingle restarts. But if you just keep giving yourself more and more to prolong the effect, the song will just keep on repeating. You can mimic this by having the game speed be made way slower too. The music will still play in normal time, and thus will be forced to repeat way more times to compensate for the fact that the ability is staying around for a lot longer. And by listening to this extended version, we can hear that this song stops way before the effect actually goes away. But this is just how it normally works. As a normal speed, it stops about a second before the invincibility actually wears off. I don't know why, but it just does. Though oddly enough, if you go into the frame by frame mode, it pauses the music, only progressing with each frame. This is different from how the normal background music works, which will just keep playing regardless. Also, this is how the music for both the hammer and the golden hammer works too, by the way. In regards to the invincibility itself, if you're grabbed when you get the Superstar, you will gain the invincibility and be immune to pummels. However, while you won't take damage from any throws, you'll still take knockback, which is a little bit funny. The metal box can actually be activated by simply attacking it, though this won't work for projectiles, likely to make it so that you still need to at least get close to the item. Yeah. Also, a feature of this item I figure a lot of people don't know about is that its duration is greatly reduced as you take damage. It normally lasts for around 12 seconds or so, but can be brought down by a lot. I found that it liked to go away after I had dealt around 65% or so, but I'm sure the numbers in time can vary. Also, in past games, the metal box made Olimar's helmet turn metal too, which was kinda funny, but they fixed that property of it in this game. Though, I guess as a consequence, or maybe just an oversight, Olimar's head doesn't get covered until the very end of the animation, which is really jarring. We've seen something similar in the channel quite a bit, just in the other way. For someone like Wario's overall wearing alt specifically, where his face gets covered instantly before everything else. And for these two Little Mac alts specifically, which have their clothes get covered before everything else. This works for all effects that cover someone, which includes ink. Also, as a fun bonus, if you cover Game & Watch in metal, his moves that transform his appearance notably have a weird texture on them, almost like you took some smooth metal and started bashing it with a hammer to make it fit into new forms. And yeah, with this smoother metal, you can actually get a really good look of the reflection of the stage. It generally matches the theme and colors of whatever you're on, but it does not change dynamically, it's just a static image. Frankly, I could spend a whole video looking at what each stage's set reflection looks like, so I'll just move it on from there. When you jump with the bunny hood the moment it despawns, the way it affects your momentum is weird, causing you to gain quite a bit of extra height. So if you can time it right, you can kinda get a mega jump right at the end. Or sometimes it can just completely destroy all your momentum, which is weird. Though if you've ever tried to footstool someone while wearing the bunny hood, you might notice that you go a lot less high than a normal footstool, to the point where it's closer to your normal short hop footstool height. Though that's not to say the bunny hood is just using the short hop height, as it has its own short hop footstool that goes even lower. So the bunny hood just has a somehow worse footstool height, which is really interesting because normally the item properly buffs jump height even for things you might not expect. There's some obvious things like increasing your wall jump height, but it also increases the height of your wall jump tech, as well as moves that bounce you, like with Simon's down air, or Greninja's. And it even increases the little jump you do after you crash land with the Warp Star. So the fact that footstools are, if anything, nerfed is really strange. And that's the video for today. So here starts the mandatory outro ramble where I talk about miscellaneous things while TF2 footage plays in the background. If you're new to the channel, yeah, this is just kind of something I do. I don't know why I do it, but I just like talking about random stuff at the end for fun, I guess. I'm really glad the first episode popped off like it did. All the support behind the idea of this miniseries really makes me glad. I keep saying mini-series, but given how far I got into this episode, I can tell there's gonna be like another 5 or 6 total before I cover every single item. And I wasn't really fully proud of that first video, if I'm gonna be honest. You can tell I tried to keep each item section around the same length, and when the Smash Ball section turned out to get really long, I kinda just wanted to end it before going further in depth and taking up too much runtime. But it turned out the topic I chose for that section actually kinda necessitated much more time than I actually gave it. So yeah, not my proudest work. Like I said in the intro, when I inevitably make the supercut of this mini-series, like us YouTubers love to do, I think I'm just gonna straight up rewrite the entire Smash Ball section just to make it better. So I guess you can look forward to that, but, you know, for the time being I'll just keep focusing on new items rather than continuously retreading old ground over and over again. I tried my best to approach things better in this video, which I hope is apparent. At the end of the day, I just wanted to go over interesting facts about each and every item, so if some sections are longer than others in order to be more thorough, then so be it. But yeah, again, thank you for watching and enjoying, and I hope you're excited to see more. As always, if you have any fun item facts of your own that you might want me to bring up in a future video, feel free to leave them down in the comments and I'll see if I can't throw them into their respective section. For now, I'm just going to thank my lovely patrons Rain, Soul700, Burbo, and everyone else for their support. Stay casual, and I'll see y'all later.